The battle for Hearthstone Lane. Under the relentless Georgia sun, a quiet storm was brewing on Hearthstone Lane. The voice that broke the stillness was sharp, laced with a flimsy authority that crumbled under scrutiny. We have a report of unsecured firearms under HOA Emergency Rule 5B. We need to come inside now. The man speaking stood at the foot of John Carver's porch, clutching a clipboard like a shield. His black tactical vest was too tight, sweat pooling under his armpits. Beside him, a younger man shifted nervously, his hand twitching near an empty holster. John Carver, a retired veteran, sat motionless in his rocking chair, a glass of iced tea sweating on the table beside him. At 55, he carried the weight of his years with a quiet strength. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the scene. The ill-fitting gear, the knockoff sunglasses, the white SUV parked crookedly in his driveway, its tinted windows screaming pretend official. In one steady breath, he sized them up and dismissed them. "There's no Rule 5B, he said, his voice low and even, cutting through the humid air like a blade. The man with the clipboard, Victor Hayes, faltered. "Look, sir, we're just following HOA protocol. You signed the agreement when you moved in." The lie hung heavy, and John could see it in the twitch of Hayes' jaw. This wasn't about rules. This was personal, orchestrated by the HOA president, Charles Rutherford, a real estate tycoon whose ego was as bloated as his bank account. John had humiliated Rutherford at last month's meeting, calmly pointing out a repealed bylaw during Rutherford's grand speech about community standards. The snickers from the crowd had stung Rutherford, and now he was striking back. "This is private property," John said, rising slowly. At 6 feet, he wasn't imposing, but his movements were precise, hinting at a coiled power. "You don't have a warrant." Hayes took a step back, rattled. His partner, Tim Wells, stammered, "We've been authorized to inspect." John tilted his head. "By whom?" Silence. Then, with a cold smile, John dropped a bomb. "Rutherford should know better than to hire a man with a sealed record from Macon County. Shouldn't he, Victor Hayes?" Hayes froze, his face paling. How did this man know his name? His past? Tim looked ready to bolt. Desperate, Hayes tried to regain control. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Calm down before," John cut him off, rolling up his sleeve with deliberate care. The sun caught the ink on his forearm, a faded spade, a skull nestled within, and a dagger so finely etched it was nearly invisible. To most, it was just a tattoo. To men like Hayes, it was a warning from a world of shadows and skill. Hayes's bravado collapsed. Without a word, he grabbed Tim, and they scrambled to their SUV, tires screeching as they fled. John watched them go, his expression unreadable. The pawns were gone, but the king, Rutherford, remained. Miles away, in a glass-walled office overlooking the manicured greens of Willow Creek Country Club, Charles Rutherford slammed his bourbon glass onto his desk. "He knew your name," he barked into his phone, his face red with fury. Hayes' trembling voice confirmed it. John Carver wasn't just a stubborn veteran. He was dangerous. Rutherford paced, his kingdom of influence club members, local officials, even the HOA board feeling suddenly fragile. He wouldn't let one man unravel it. "Apply more pressure," he growled. "Remind him this is my neighborhood." The next few days were tense. A dead sparrow appeared on John's doorstep, its body stiff and deliberate. Then, a deep scratch marred the side of his Chevy Silverado, a truck he'd spent hours polishing. Finally, a rusty Ford sedan parked down the street, its driver nervous kid with a newspaper he never read watching John's house. John could have called the cops. Instead, he grabbed a bottle of water and strolled toward the car. The kid sank lower, but John tapped the window. "Thirsty?" he asked, voice friendly but firm. "Tell Rutherford he's wasting his money. You're not cut out for this." The kid sped off, leaving skid marks. John knew Rutherford wouldn't stop. That night, in his study, he fired up a secure laptop and contacted an old friend, Rafe, through an encrypted channel. "Need intel on Charles Rutherford and Victor Hayes, Willow Creek, Georgia," he typed. Rafe's reply was swift. Rutherford was no mere HOA bully. He used a fixer tied to organized crime, and Hayes was hired muscle with a dishonorable discharge. "This isn't just a spat," Rafe warned. "Relocate." John typed back, "Negative. Just needed the battlefield's shape." He closed the laptop. Running wasn't in his blood. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived from the Willow Creek HOA. It was a summons accusing John of threatening behavior and community safety violations. Rutherford had flipped the script, painting John as the villain in a kangaroo court designed to humiliate him. John read the letter twice, then walked to his closet. Behind the flannel shirts hung a garment bag. He unzipped it, revealing his Marine Corps dress blues, the midnight fabric gleaming with polished brass and ribbons of valor. Rutherford thought he was setting a trap. He didn't know the lion was ready to roar. The Willow Creek Community Center was a drab room of folding tables and fluorescent lights. Rutherford sat at the head, flanked by his loyal board members, savoring the moment. In minutes, he'd crushed John Carver. Then the door opened. John stepped in, not in jeans, but in his dress blues, the uniform radiating authority. Behind him stood Detective Mark Sullivan, badge shining, hand resting on his holster. The room went silent. Rutherford's smirk vanished. John didn't sit. "Before we address these accusations," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "some context." He placed a folder on the table and connected his phone to a projector. A video flickered on. Hayes and Wells at his doorstep, spouting fake bylaws, posturing, then fleeing. The board watched, horrified. John flipped to a page in his folder. Victor Hayes' record, aggravated assault in Macon County. Not HOA material, I'd say. Gasps rippled through the room. Then came the kill shot. "Phone logs," John said, sliding a document forward. "Subpoenaed by Detective Sullivan. 16 calls, 28 texts between Rutherford's phone and Hayes' burner, starting hours after our bylaw dispute." Rutherford slumped, his face ashen. John held up one last page. A notarized affidavit from Tim Wells, confessing Rutherford's plan, payment, orders, target. The board stared at Rutherford, their loyalty shattered. Detective Sullivan stepped forward. "Charles Rutherford, you're under arrest for conspiracy, criminal impersonation, and witness intimidation." Handcuffs clicked. Rutherford's protests, "I am Charles Rutherford," fell flat as Sullivan let him out. The board members wouldn't meet his eyes. John closed his folder and nodded to Sullivan. "Appreciate the cleanup, Mark." Sullivan smiled. "You did the heavy lifting." The arrest shook Willow Creek. The HOA board collapsed, its members resigning amid public outrage. At a town hall, residents spoke out against Rutherford's reign of fear. John's flaga-bold "Don't tread on me" became a symbol of defiance and principle. Neighbors who'd once avoided him now offered nods or waves. The mailman lingered to chat. John hadn't sought their approval, but the quiet respect felt like home. A week later, as dusk painted the sky, John sat on his porch, tinkering with a fishing reel. Footsteps approached. It was Henry Tate, a retiree who'd once petitioned against John's flag. "Evening, Carver," Henry said, hesitantly. "I owe you an apology. I misjudged you." John nodded, listening. "You didn't just protect your home," Henry continued. "You protected ours." He offered a hand. John shook it. "Apology accepted, Henry." Henry grinned. "Care for a bourbon?" "To a quieter neighborhood." John smiled. "I'd like that." As they walked to Henry's house, John glanced back at his porch. He'd fought for peace, for the right to live unbothered. The tyrant was gone, and Hearthstone Lane was free. The watchman could rest. What did you think of John's stand against Rutherford? Was he right to confront the HOA's abuse head-on, or should he have handled it differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on how we tackle bullying and injustice in our lives. Do you stand and fight like John, or take another path? Let's hear your perspective.